When Friern Hospital was built, it was the biggest lunatic asylum in Europe. The foundation stone was laid by Prince Albert in 1849. It covers an area 5 times the size of Buckingham Palace. Some of the corridors are 1/3 of a mile long. There are over 800 inmates, and for most of them, this is their permanent home. One in 12 men and 1 in 8 of all women will need to come to a place like this at some time in their lives. Most come voluntarily, but a small percentage are compulsorily admitted on the opinion of a psychiatrist or even the police. Mental illness usually starts in adolescence or young adulthood. Some of the patients in this ward have been here ever since. But in their old age, they've been overtaken by an illness even more serious than the ones they were originally admitted for. Senile dementia is a general deterioration of the mind, especially of short-term memory and thinking. Unlike many mental illnesses, dementia has all the characteristics of a physical disease, for it actually changes the appearance of the brain. This collection of patients' brains was made by an enthusiastic psychiatrist. It's kept in the hospital mortuary. These brains didn't come from patients with dementia. Their ex-owners suffered instead from severe psychotic disorders like schizophrenia, which is an illness of thinking. But far from displaying physical signs of their owner's madness, the brains appear to be quite normal. This puts psychiatrists in a difficult position, because there's nothing identifiably physically wrong with most people who go mad. Diagnosis can only depend on listening extremely carefully to what the patients have to say.
So I did Nelson's portrait about that big with him. The left eye looks so real that it looks as if Nelson's looking at you. And there's a little boat on the top left, Dr. Livingston.
Apart from painting, have you got any other special abilities?
Well, I'd like to sail away with Nelson on a new boat.
In this training session, a consultant psychiatrist, Dr. Campbell, is teaching diagnosis to more junior doctors.
We'd come back to our friends and go away forever.
They're trying to sort out whether the patient is suffering only from an illness of mood called hypomania, or whether she also has a disorder of thinking, which could lead to a different diagnosis.
Living there, but he left them to marry Karen and have a little girl called Sian. And they've gone to Australia, but they're coming back sometime to see us.
I'm getting a bit confused. I think I asked you about painting and you went over to Australia.
I don't know why, because the world is round. If you cut the world in half like an apple, you'll find purple and pink and yellow stripes inside, with the blue river running through the middle and some green fir trees. That's the world. I can see the world cut in half like an apple, like that painting. Or actually, that painting should have a knife in it to cut the fruit, or a spoon to eat yogurt with. It should have a pot of yogurt. I can do still life with a pot of yogurt, a pink toilet roll, and a green frog. No, not a green frog, that's horrible. That's like the Muppets. No, a still life with a pot of apricot. No, a tin of Israeli apricots is going to be my still life.
I think one must, again, put quite a big question mark on it. It doesn't seem to me to be a straightforward flight of ideas. That there may be something else happening. Or would you like to take a different view? Because I think we're all in the same boat, watching this. I mean, you know, do you accept that this is sort of the kind of degree of inconsequentiality that you might expect?
The link from the world to Apple, to yogurt, seemed very tenuous or somewhat bizarre. You could see where the thoughts were going, but it wasn't a very usual progression of thought. So she seemed to have some evidence of thought disorder there.
But there were connections between each
Yes,
thought.
They were slightly bizarre.
One could follow the move from painting Nelson to sailing away with Nelson. I think this is more consistent with flight of ideas rather than a derailment which is jumping onto a completely different theme. I felt I could follow it.
Yeah. You'd accept that as a kind of artistic vision rather than as a disorganised thought process that you were seeing. Yes.
Hospital psychiatrists almost never use psychoanalysis. They mostly treat mental illnesses with drugs, and the choice of any particular drug often depends on the correct interpretation of extremely subtle clues.
An artist or something. In fact, she changes. She's quite organised for part of that interview, and then she becomes quite disorganised, which suggests something more discreet than a chronic process. Sorry, than a, I didn't mean chronic process, than a, you know, just an ordinary artistic, creative person.
Yeah, it's a small question, or does anybody dispute that?
It's difficult because we know this lady's a patient in hospital, and so we're looking for pathology, perhaps. But if we just met her in the street and she began talking like this, we would make no sense of it, I suspected, and would think to ourselves that something was not quite right, and probably move on.
Yeah, I've had my medicine. I've had my medication.
You've got your drugs to take home with you?
Yeah.
Where are they?
I've put them away safely. I've packed them at the bottom of my bag.
Perhaps you would like to give them to me and I'll put them in the medicine
I
closet.
certainly will.
Sure.
May I have my phenytoin?
I'll give you a phenytoin now, and then you can bring back the drugs and you can get them tomorrow morning.
Okay, if you remind me, someone. Okay.
Sure. Phenytoin 100.
That's water.
What are you studying to be a doctor?
A nurse.
A nurse? Tough life.
All right, Rita?
Best of luck. I will hand them in, I promise.
Okie dokie. Right, I think we're finished.
At the other end of the hospital, Dr. Malcolm Weller is about to start his ward round. The patient being discussed has just been admitted to the hospital.
Because if you remember, the very first admission she had here arose because she refused to take the lithium, thinking that she was pregnant or wanted to become pregnant.
That's right.
And her compliance since then has been very fluctuant, really. That's it.
That's right. And what are we treating you with at the moment? Have we got her? She's on Corvallis.
Well, as on the last admission, she's on quite a
I think we started on lithium as well.
quite a mixture.
Can you just pass it over? Yeah. She needed it. I mean, we had to put her on this. I did it myself.
Why did she stop it? Did you have any serious side effects? Or?
Well, I wonder if she could be brought in and we'll go through these things. I got cooperation from the manufacturers and they gave me all the literature. They searched it and got it together for me. Hello, can I sit down? You're looking very glum or very tense.
Who's tense?
Sorry?
Tense!
Tense. Ah. Mm-hmm.
Go on, look at my hands.
Uh-huh. Looking.
You ask what we always do.
Mm-hmm. Always, or once. What do you think is making you so tense? Because you're very ill, I suppose. And you keep discharging yourself right in the middle of the treatment, so we never get you quite right. And then you relapse in no time at all because you stop taking the medicines.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I want to suggest two things to you.
Yeah.
One is that you have an injection so that the medicine stays in your body for some time. The other is that we oblige you to stay in hospital until we get you quite right.
Yes, but what about the baby?
Well, you're not pregnant.
No.
Baby's a future baby, but this is a present problem.
Yeah, okay, I agree. I submit. I submit.
Do you want to come back in?
Jasmine, come and sit down.
I would guess that when you left us, you stopped taking your medicine. But did anything else happen to upset you? Make you
Yes, I failed my exams.
Well, I think you might not have been quite well when you took the exams. Don't you think? Maybe when you're better, you'll pass the exams without too much trouble. Have you had any problems with your boyfriend?
Yes, lots. He hit me, beat me up, hasn't it? He beat me up.
Was this the first time?
No.
He often beats you up.
Yes.
What did he beat you up for this time?
I can't say. Dr. Hamilton knows,
I see.
doesn't he?
You have a lot of problems with your boyfriend.
Yes.
One wonders why you stick by him so closely.
I love him. Fortunately.
Does he visit you here at hospital?
Yes, every day. I keep telling you.
How are you sleeping?
I'm not sleeping at all.
No?
Not awake. My dad would put it. My dad would put it. My dad would put it. Put it. Not a wink.
We think you're very much better if you take lithium, don't you?
Yes.
I think it's a pity that you stop and start, because if you stop it, it's worse than not taking it, so to speak.
Okay, I'll take the lithium.
Thank you very much. How would you characterize her behavior? Yes, affective disorder.
Affective disorder, also called manic depressive psychosis, is an illness of mood. The patient took the drugs and got better in 2 weeks.
No Priscillin. Okay, John.
Far from being merely tranquilizers, many of the drugs work, and the patients get dramatically better.
Chlorpromazine, 100.
80 to 90% of people with schizophrenia and mood disorder can now be prevented from getting relapses of their illnesses, so long as they continue to take the drugs. Unfortunately, the drugs used to treat schizophrenia can have unpleasant side effects, so many people stop taking them.
Fine. All right, John. Lovely.
And if schizophrenia is not treated, the illness starts to blend itself insidiously into the character of its victim.
Would you say that inside yourself you're happy or sad?
I'm agitated. I keep thinking people want to murder me. It's ever since John Lennon died. It did worry me.
Which people do you think want to murder you?
Well, sometimes I think the whole of society is totally violent against me. But I should have no real reason for thinking so.
Do you talk about your ideas to the other patients in the hospital?
No, I never really do, no. I don't like talking sometimes. I don't know what to say sometimes. I often talk to my mother, but I never really get any replies from her. I suppose she thinks I've been... Well, maybe I'm not schizophrenic at the moment. Or maybe I am. I don't know, maybe she's heard enough of it all, really. And just wants to get on with her own life again.
You told me before that you have a very close interest in a particular character in the Second World War. I wonder if you could tell me about that.
Oh, Second World War now. It's got me on the spot. Adolf Hitler, I met Adolf Hitler. And since my father was rather jovial thing with me, he puts my hair down. And I look exactly like Hitler's double. I actually look like Hitler. And I designed Grass Bay and Leadmore. And I had some weaponry knowledge. They saw me as potential Adolf Hitler. I was 7 at the time. And I invented the atomic bomb. And I parachuted in with it. I thought, well, if it doesn't kill me, it's not going to kill any Japanese. And I can't understand the media saying there's 60,000 dead is rather preserving, to say the least.
You don't ever feel that things aren't quite right with you while you're in the hospital?
No. If I'm feeling a bit queasy, they generally offer me medicine anyway, so.
But by and large, you feel 100%, do you?
People with psychotic illnesses, like schizophrenia, are usually quite unaware that they're ill. Their strange experiences are quite foreign to most of us, although we may sometimes glimpse the world they live in during our brief moments between sleep and waking.
Please. Thanks very much. It's just to collect Stephen tomorrow morning. We'll collect him between 10:30 and 11. Good. Thanks very much. Should be here.
On Ash Ward, which specialises in acute admissions, the charge nurse is Sister McCarthy. Dr. Campbell is about to start his ward round.
Morning, Dr. Campbell.
Morning.
Yeah, hang on.
Right.
Dr. Bateman's already here.
Yeah, could you arrange with the social worker?
How did you first get the idea that you had 6 babies inside you? Do you remember how it first dawned on you?
Well, I was eating my lunch one day and the baby said, "Where's mine, Mummy?"
You heard the voice?
Yes. I've got remarkable hearing and so have the babies.
Yes.
They can hear me talking to them.
Yes. And that was
I'll tell
one
them
voice.
what
And
happened,
then,
that's
how
all.
did you know there were 6 of them?
I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the problem lay. I fed for standard. But of course it would be a fairly good standard and the babies jibbed. They went for the meat. They're still going for the meat, but that doesn't bother me. Some have dropped it.
Yes. Now, how do you know they particularly like meat?
Because they said so, they cried.
They cried?
Yes.
So are they happy when you eat meat?
Well, I think basically they said, "Mummy, can we tell you we're not getting enough food and there's not room for 6 of us?" They were sweet.
Yeah. Can you hear all 6 of them talking to you separately with separate voices?
Not very often.
No. Do you know? Do you have names in your mind for them?
No, I don't put names in my mind.
Can you tell whether they're boys or girls?
They tell the doctor how many boys and girls there are, and there's 3 girls and 3 boys, I think. 3 boys, there must be 3 girls.
I see. And what are they doing at the moment?
I will ask them for you and see if they answer you. What are you doing at the moment? Goodness, scavenging for meat. Told him.
Sorry, we're...
Scavenging for meat.
Scavenging for meat?
Yes.
And they scrummage in your body for meat?
Yes.
Now, all this must have struck you as very strange, isn't it? Because you don't look as if you're pregnant, do you?
I don't think it did affect me as being very strange because the babies told me to give them life. And that's the one thing I would have done. I cried when I was going to lose the babies because it was the effort that was going into it.
Mm.
You know, I felt it was worth it. I wouldn't have minded dying for the babies.
Really? Yeah.
No.
Has it ever sort of crossed your mind that this might be in some way a trick of the mind, something to do with the fact that you hadn't been quite well mentally?
Well, I think it's a lot 6 babies to say, I think it's a lot 6 babies to say I wasn't well mentally. I think I just got low on food, Doctor. I think it was a trick of perhaps something I'd eaten, the way that my bowels affected me, rather than that I was mental. I think I'd still as much.
Yeah. But are you absolutely sure that you've got 6 babies inside?
Well, they all reply, Doctor, what would it be?
So you can hear them talking?
Yes, there's 2 round the back. There's 1 answered, and there was 2 or 3 close together.
Okay. Yes. Apart from hearing the babies' voices, do you ever hear anybody else's voices talking to you or about you? Even when there's nobody around?
Well, I told the doctor I had a remarkable experience in Scotland. I thought I had a few voices. There were Scotch voices, but I'd never been there before, so the association seemed ridiculous. Except to say that they were of some authority.
Mm-hmm. I see, okay. Let me change the subject completely for the moment. Have you got any teeth?
No.
You like it that way, do you?
Well, the doctor at Garland's informed me that he found that it was practically not very important to put them in after he'd had them out for a considerable length of time.
And you don't worry about that?
No.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to mention or ask me about?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming in to talk to us.
Thank you very much.
Go back to the ward. Let's just review some of the features. Were there any unquestionably schizophrenic symptoms that she...
Well, she described one episode of hearing voices in the third person. She said there was a small talk about me in Scottish.
And she appeared to be actually hallucinating during our conversation, that she could actually talk to the babies.
But she was otherwise reasonably
Were there
coherent.
episodes of true thought disorder, do you think?
Yes, I think there was.
Yes, it's always difficult actually to remember. There were 1 or 2 bits, I think particularly where she was talking about the meat.
Yeah.
That it was actually not possible to follow the connections between her thoughts. Anything else do you think that we could say was fairly unequivocally schizophrenic rather than, say, associated with a mood disorder or some other kind of problem? I think there was one other first rank symptom, possibly, wasn't there, that earlier on she talked about actually feeling these babies. She could actually experience them moving around inside her.
It could just be part of her delusions.
It could be a delusional misinterpretation of bodily sensations. I think it sounded a bit more than that, as if this was actually a so-called somatic hallucination. We obviously need to connect up with any past that we can find. And she'll stay here for good until we've done that.
Yes, she doesn't need to go back in the room.
I think the great question is we don't really know the picture. I think her vagrancy may well be associated with disorganisation of her thinking, and quite often it's accepted that people are vagrants by nature, when in fact it's clear that they have spells of illness which haven't been adequately treated, and that may go on for months or years.
2 days later, the patient ran away. She probably returned to her life as a tramp.
As disorganised as we see her this morning.
I told you I was going to see her earlier on, didn't I? Yes, that's right.
Morning, Mr. Would you like to come in and sit down here? We'll just carry on as as normal. I gather that you've actually got an arrangement to go back to the day hospital on Thursday, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And that'll mean that you leave us
Yes.
any day now?
I'm supposed to see someone today regarding housing because, of course, I don't have a home to go to.
No, that's really rather crucial, isn't it? Can I just ask Dr. Livingston, what is the hope about that you would be...
Well, Camden have arranged to temporarily house you and later on put you in a council flat as soon as one's available.
Yes, what do you think about that, actually? It's all rather worrying.
Well, I just hope that if I'm put into temporary accommodation, it won't last forever, if you know what I mean.
No,
sometimes when people are put into temporary accommodation, then, you know, they're always afraid that they'll be forgotten about.
Yes, I don't think that'll happen, actually.
You don't?
We get a lot of help from Camden, but can I just review with you, now that we are coming to the time of your leaving, just how much change has been in you since you came to hospital, and what problems are that you feel remain?
Well, I came to hospital. I was extremely confused and upset because of the phase I've been going through. And since being in here, I've begun to be a lot calmer, and I've tried to persuade myself that was a whole lot of coincidences.
Yes, which all added up to this sort of nightmarish experience of being pursued.
Yes, and being turned away from the hospital too.
And
2 hospitals.
How real is it now? Could it still be going on, do you think?
Well, some of the things that did happen to me actually did happen to me. There's no doubt about that. And that's what made it all the more terrifying, because people, knowing that I was in a mental hospital, they just felt that I was making it all up.
Yes.
But a lot of it I was not making up, and I haven't been making up. I went to Mind in Harley Street, 22 Harley Street one day, and I was on my way there, and somebody was following me. They definitely were following me. I tried to shake them off, and the person persisted, and then I thought I had shaken them off, and I got outside of Mind, 22 Harley Street, and the person was waiting in front there. And there was also a white car, a white Mercedes, waiting there. And I didn't go into 22 Mind, Harley Street, and then somebody asked me, you know, what was wrong? Was there anything wrong? And I said, yes, that man over there who's standing outside Harley Street offices has been following me. And I stood in a doorway opposite, and I watched him. I just didn't let him, you know, I didn't want to lose him. And he went into Harley Street and must have gone up the stairs, and he was looking at me again through a window for quite a long time.
And did you feel at the time there was some motive in that, or something behind it?
Well, maybe I got it all mixed up with the what I'd seen on the television, those fanatics in the embassy that time. That happened, and with the kind of information which I had because of a previous job, I felt that they were waiting for me, or something bad was going to happen.
Yeah.
And in the end, I took a taxi to my home, and this white Mercedes followed the taxi. And then there seemed to have been... No, I better not talk about that.
Why not?
I was talking about the place that I lived in.
Yeah.
It seemed that it was being wired up specially. There were lots and lots of digging going on all around, and putting of new cables down.
Can you remember the actual sort of feeling tone of all this? How you actually felt in yourself while this was going on?
Sometimes I felt awful, because I feel I'm such a tiny drop in the ocean which is struggling against being taken over by people with military ideas, and I felt quite sure that I felt very overwhelmed most of the time.
Yes. Did you also feel in any way at all rather sort of thrilled and excited about it? Because remember when we first met, you did seem...
I seemed to be on the crest of a wave, yes.
Something like that, yes. everything was going terribly fast and you were
Well, yes,
speedy.
things, yes, exactly. I mean, things would happen, it seemed, from one hour to another. And I was never quite sure what was going to happen to me. And some things that I've been running away from, I've got to face up to eventually. Like, you know, getting back to work and things like that.
Our view is that you've made a very substantial recovery here. And
Yes.
although that's a process that needs to go on further, that you're very much better than you were. And it is possible that some longer-term treatment would actually keep you normal and stable. But I think that's something that obviously will emerge more clearly as we go along. And the point is that I think you're ready for the next step, which is to move on from hospital.
She left the hospital and is now living in a bed and breakfast hotel.
After 10. Yeah, that'll be fine. Yeah, lovely, thanks.
Most of the time, the patients are looked after by nurses.
Anyway, listen, have you settled down in Ward 7?
Well, I'm settling down.
Are you? Why are you lonely today?
Well, I want to see my children.
Yeah?
See my husband's had my children for 10 years, and he won't let me see them. And I had a nervous breakdown because my boyfriend got killed to give me a baby.
Yeah?
And my little girl died.
Yeah?
And that's why I cry a lot.
Yeah.
And I want to see my sister.
Well, when you get down...
They sent me to Rampton for stealing the child.
Yeah, oh, don't worry about Rampton, dear, don't worry. Listen, that's past.
Because my baby died.
Listen, will you listen? Don't think of Rampton now. Don't think of the past. What you want to do now is get better, right? And when you get to Devon...
Yeah?
Get the social worker attached to the... Where you're going to live in where? Where are you going to live in?
I'm going to live in Holberton.
Yes. Well, the social worker there could trace your children, and you probably could see them separately. Separately.
What's the name of your...
I wish I could.
Well, only the social worker can help you.
Oh, yes.
They can find out what school they go to.
Mary
The
College,
social worker's name.
Yeah.
Don't get so upset. You mustn't get upset. You mustn't get upset. Why? Dry your eyes.
When is it?
Yeah.
Monday?
Yeah.
I went to Rampton for stealing a child because the mother neglected it.
Yeah.
She left it locked in a room.
Yeah.
They locked me in a room for 2 years.
Yeah.
They locked me in a room for 2 years.
Listen, Karen. Don't think of the past. Look, you're here now. You're getting better.
Yeah.
We're trying to discharge you soon, aren't we?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
I'm frightened though I'm going to get murdered.
No, you won't get murdered. Who's going to murder you? Who's going to do that
I
to you?
don't know.
I think you're just thinking about it. You just worry yourself too much. Huh? Think of something nice, something nice to think about.
I get very weak.
Huh?
I suffer from my hemoglobin. I come off penicillin after 15 years.
Yeah, but that was for
Because
your
of
skin.
For my skin.
Yeah.
I don't know what germ I've got.
No, you haven't got any germ. You've just got acne, that's all. Just a skin rash.
I've been on it 15 years.
Yeah. Not 15. Not all that.
I
On and
since
off.
I was
On and off.
on and off.
Yeah, listen, can't you think of anything cheerful?
Some patients don't get better and stay on more or less permanently. There are about 400 of them, and they're encouraged to do paid work on production lines and in workshops within the hospital. The idea is to teach them useful skills that might eventually enable them to have some kind of a life outside.
The hospital is a very enclosed environment and very safe and secure. And the outside world is rather big and frightening.
Do you get frightened here sometimes?
Yes, I get frightened here sometimes, but it's not the same sort of fear. Because I know if I was to hurt myself here, someone would put it right, whereas if you're outside, you've got nobody immediately.
So you'd get frightened if there weren't people there you could go to?
Yes, I would.
Yeah. What do they actually do for you? Can you put that into words?
Well, they're sort of they're training you to do something useful.
Some psychiatrists take a particular interest in rehabilitating patients, like Dr. Joy Dalton.
And support that really needs to be there from the hospital, from a hospital like this one.
Or somewhere.
Or somewhere, yes, like this hospital.
So you wouldn't want to be just leaving with nothing to go to do, and no one to go to ask, to give you support. See, what's interesting about what you do here, Mary, is that you're very able and you do a lot of things.
Yes.
And yet you don't seem to have much confidence in your ability to do those things.
No, I haven't.
Is that right?
Yes.
I wonder what would help you with that. To feel more confident that you can actually do the things that you do.
Well, I don't really know at the moment. I'm trying to find ways all around things, and then what happened to my aunt's thrown me a bit. I know I've got to get away from it in the end, but I'm sort of holding on to you still at the moment.
Are you familiar with people leaving you? Is that something that you feel?
Well, I've lost so many people have died in my family that I'm just lost at the moment.
So is this place a bit like a family for you?
Yes. I mean, it has the same sort of family arguments, the same sort of family grouping, you know, the same sort of family matters. It's just like a family, really.
Yeah. Sure. So you can think of going out of the hospital if it's with someone you know, right? And some kind of work.
Yes.
Yeah? And someone to keep an eye on you.
Yeah.
And to help
Going
you
into a
out.
family, I thought that would help. Because I could feel, if it was a family I knew,
yes.
and I know the family that I talked about, I know them very well. And I will add one thing, I had a very nasty experience once. My cousin, whom I always get taken for, there's two of us, it's my cousin and me, and you've handled both of us.
And I can't tell the difference, is that
You
right?
can't tell the difference, because we're identical twins.
Yes.
We wear the same clothes, we have the same haircut and everything else, identical. You've handled both of us. And I'm the older one of the two. My cousin would have been 44 this year, 43, 44. And I'm much older than that.
How old are you?
63.
You're 63.
I'm a 63-year-old, yes.
I don't believe you.
It's perfectly true. No, it's perfectly true, Doctor. I'm telling you the truth.
No, it's not that. I don't think it's that you're lying.
You always thought it was me, wasn't there?
There's a lot of confusion, isn't there?
No, it wasn't me.
Okay.
My twin cousin. I'm the oldest one of the two, much older. Because my cousin is only a year older than me. And I go with the year.
Sometimes quite difficult to know what you're telling us.
Well, what I'm trying to tell you is that you've had my young cousin here since 77, that you've only had me here 3 or 4 months. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You've had my young cousin since 71, but you've only had me for the last 3 or 4 months.
Yes. The way I understand that is that I think we've known much more about you more recently.
Yes, you have.
And understood much more about your hopes and your fears and what happens in your world.
Yes, you have. And you've been very helpful to me. And I had to let you know my age, because as we were discussing the drug problem situation beforehand, you can now see what I was getting at.
That you feel out of balance and sometimes not clear who you are.
Yes.
Is that right?
Most of the time I know it, and I know my age, but sometimes when people ask me, it just goes away from me.
Right. I think I understand that now. Thank you.
Despite her problems, this rather exceptional long-stay patient is a very good candidate for outside life. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for most of the others.
So is it a crisis for you at the moment? Are you having a breakdown? Are you hoping that after you can come back here?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah.
I must say, At the moment, I honestly don't want to, if I can possibly make it work for you there, because there are a number of things that I would have thought would actually, in the long run, benefit you greatly. And people that you've mentioned, actually, might well be moving on. What I would hope is that we could have a real go at it for a bit longer, because I think there are real advantages there. Because you had a rather despairing spell, didn't you, after you'd been back home to Scotland?
Yeah.
And you thought you were virtually telling us we had to lock you away and throw the key away, I think was the sort of thing you were saying, wasn't it? And I think that was, I hope it was you being gloomier than perhaps you really need to be all the time. Hmm?
You should still do that.
Could you still go back to the day centre, you mean?
No, you should lock me away and throw the key away.
Why?
I'm no good to anybody.
Can't other people be the judge of that? I know you get very downhearted and depressed and fed up at times, but other people actually don't speak badly of you at all, particularly when you're able to take part and mix with other people a bit. The reports we got from the day centre were very favourable. It's almost as if you won't allow people to think well of you. See, I think the problem lies in your own estimation of yourself as being no good. And if other people think you might have some good in you, you actually find that a burden. Do you really want me to say you're no good?
Yes.
Because I have to hold on to my memory of you as being both miserable but also being cheerful at times and being much more positive. And you're more than just the miserable person I'm seeing today, aren't you? So that I don't think I should be guided absolutely by those very sad and despairing feelings. There's also another side to it. I'll be coming down to the ward tomorrow, Elizabeth. Perhaps we can take this further. Okay?
Since the 1950s, it's been official policy to encourage long-stay patients to leave, and the hospital has shrunk by over 1,000 beds. But Friern still costs the government £12 million a year. This wing of the hospital is being knocked down because the wards are no longer needed. The plan is to demolish the rest of the hospital in a few years' time. In the interests of economy, the remaining patients will be restored to the community.
And this is where we've got to say goodbye, Anna.
A fate that has already overtaken the old hospital farm, which has a rich new crop of housing estates.
That I think you'll always have. Afraid so. Best of intentions. Thanks very much, Anna.
It may be that the patients who remain are reluctant to leave because they've become somehow institutionalized. but most of them know that the nature of their illnesses puts them at a great disadvantage outside. Many of the patients who've already left now live safely in hostels and small hotels. But a growing percentage of others seem to be joining the homeless, the vagrants, and the criminals on the bottom rung of society.
I wonder if you could describe how long you've both been here.
Well, I've been in and out, off and on, you see, in the hospital. But I've been here quite a while now.
I've been 15 years.
Do you like the hospital?
Yeah. It's a good hospital. Caring.
The plan is to close it down and demolish it and send everybody back outside again. What do you feel about that?
They still have the same problem. They close the hospital. They still have mental people outside, so there's no point in closing the hospital. Part of the community, isn't it? People work here. They close it. They lose their job. It's wrong. It's wrong.
The Health Advisory Service is visiting the hospital, authorised to prepare a report directly for the Secretary of State. The future, not only of Friern, but of hospital psychiatry itself, is in the balance. For in the new order, it seems that quite different professions may well replace psychiatry in the front line of the battle against mental illness.
Mr. Ferrier, perhaps it would be helpful if my colleagues introduced themselves.
Yes, I'm Charles Barker. I'm a nursing member of the team.
I'm Di Lockie. I'm an occupational therapist.
I'm Tom Grady. I'm also interested in the nursing side.
I'm John Woolley. I'm the administrative member of the team.
That Wood, the social worker.
We have the duty in the end to make a report which I emphasise is an advisory report. We're looking out for good practice, and we don't by no means interested only in criticism or anything of that sort. So we here are a team of professionals from all disciplines with a great deal of experience of the hospital and social services, drawn together as a team to work here for the next 3 weeks. And we shall be looking during that time, not only at the hospital here, of course, but at the services throughout the health district. And I hope that we shall be able to see as much as possible.
Tomorrow evening's Horizon joins archaeologist Professor Barry Cunliffe and his team as they tease out the hidden secrets of Danebury, a 2,500-year-old hill fort in Hampshire, and discover a vivid picture of Celtic society. That's Decoding Danebury in Horizon tomorrow evening at 9:30, and again next Sunday at 2 o'clock, here on 2. Now, more works of beauty from the Great Art Collection, with the third programme in a series spotlighting the achievements of Western art since the Renaissance, drawing on masterpieces originally featured in the 100 Great Paintings series.
In the entire story of art, nothing sounds quite so lofty as the High Renaissance. Just a few decades at the beginning of the 16th century, but here was a time when the Pope had the confidence to pull down the principal church of Rome, St. Peter's, knowing that his architects could now rebuild it with a grandeur to match the monuments of ancient Rome. The High Renaissance, the culmination of so many great discoveries that Italian artists and architects had been making over the previous century. The laws of symmetry, the science of perspective, absolute technical mastery. And most of all, perhaps, the certainty that there was such a thing as perfect beauty, and that it could be expressed in human forms, in colour, and in architecture. Actually, much of the loftiness in the term High Renaissance is due to the simple fact that three of the most gifted artists who ever lived were now working in Italy simultaneously: Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael. And of those three, it was the youngest, Raphael, who came closest to expressing those pure ideals of the High Renaissance. In the same year that the Pope made his momentous decision to rebuild St. Peter's, 1506, the young Raphael created what many people have felt to be one of the most perfect pictures ever painted. Sir David Piper looks at it.
Raphael painted this Madonna in Florence in 1506. It's been in Austria since at least the 17th century. And it came here to the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna with the imperial collections. When Raphael painted it, he was between his 23rd and his 25th year, and it's one of three variations on this theme that he painted in that period. There she sits, calm in the strong red, the rich blue of her dress, and her hands are poised very lightly by the body of the Christ child, not holding, scarcely touching, but ready to catch if the child should teeter. The little St. John kneels, offering that slender wand with a crosspiece at the top to the Christ child. And beyond, the subdued olive greens of the landscape stretch back into the blue of the distance, the clearer blue of the sky. In the middle distance, the mist begins to rise over the still waters of a lake. There's a little village or town knee-deep in its own reflections, a castle above on the hill top. Later, in Rome, Raphael's production of variations on the Madonna theme increased in spite of his vast preoccupations with the decorations in the Vatican, and they include some of the most remarkable versions in the whole history of art, but also the most popular ones, like the Sistine Madonna. In fact, Raphael's standing in high-level art criticism has fluctuated through the centuries, but the popularity of his visions of the Madonna, broadcast to millions in cheap and often dreadful reproductions, they've answered a profound and enduring popular need through the generations, but so all-pervasive that I find it sometimes difficult to focus on them. Yet the Sistine Madonna is the apotheosis of woman, divine, the divine version of the romantic troubadour tradition of courtly love. That's woman not just on a pedestal, but taken off, lifting effortlessly up into heaven. And nothing could be further from a sex object, and yet all the time she remains human in her divinity. Most human of all, and so perhaps the most loved of all in Raphael's almost countless gallery, the Madonna della Sedia. Technically, formally, it's a miracle of composition and execution in that circular frame. Humanly irresistible as young mum and child, ordinary girl with a baby, yet radiating beauty, and not so much by any classical beauty of features, as by the direct simplicity, the intensity of that universal human emotion. It's all there, the security, the love of mother and child, the ever-recurring miracle of renewal, and the concomitant awareness of the vulnerability of all things mortal. In this case, the most irredeemable hostage to fortune in history. And yet, for all the splendor, the richness of those later Madonnas, personally I'm most touched by these earlier ones. They've got something pristine, they're also a bit old-fashioned, but cool as spring. There she sits, the Madonna of the Meadows. But the triangular motif is very insistent, that pyramid formed by the three figures. And its base and right-hand angle are marked almost willfully by the Virgin's bare white foot, extended almost beyond the limits of anatomy to touch the frame. but then it's easy to overemphasize the geometric scaffolding of the picture. Raphael's strength, and one in which he had no peer, was to fuse form and content, abstract aesthetics, human subject matter, intimations of immortality and divinity, all those into indissoluble unity. A unity that his admirers found ideal, even indeed divine. Here, the Madonna's head is indeed the climax. It's the apex to which the triangle rises. But from it, the composition also depends. Her downward glance encompassing the defenseless, naked children, almost as if within a tent of her protective love. Raphael himself once wrote that when painting a beautiful woman, I use a certain idea which comes into my mind. In the preparatory drawings for this painting, you can watch this certain idea, watch it almost cinematically as it accommodates itself to the reality of flesh and blood, and perhaps especially to that of a child finding its feet. The first doodlings, perhaps here, it's a sheet in the Albertina in Vienna. The Madonna on the left, just dashed in with the pen. St. John shown standing, not kneeling. And other Bambini studies on the right, and above them, a quite different idea of a Madonna and child. And then, turning the paper round, on the left, the triangular dominant of the final composition is established. St. John, you can see, still standing, but on the right, Raphael's experimenting with his pose. A possible genuflection is indicated. And then, unfolding the sheet, on the other side, Raphael's marvelous pen in full swirl and swoop, until in that middle sketch, the whole thing is swept into a rhythmic coherence. And no less a volumetric coherence. Do you see how solidly, in those so free contours, the whole mass and weight of the bodies are held? Then there's a drawing at Chatsworth. Maybe actually this is the very first idea. But it's difficult to establish priority with Raphael because he would doodle, improvise, different solutions all the time. Here, St. John's got right down on his knees. And in fact, the two babes are embracing, if a bit gingerly. And this is surely noted from the life. And then there's this remarkable drawing in the Ashmolean, pen and ink abandoned, instead a rigorous solid fashioning outlined with a metal point, then modelled with brush and brownish wash. It's very simplified, establishing just the essential massing, and as you can see, drawn from the nude, although it may be even from a lay figure or a wax model. And so, last of all the surviving drawings, in New York, the figure clothed as it will be in the painting, but with the underlying design preserved with a beautiful clarity. And thence the painting would have begun. The wood panel prepared and primed, the outlines pricked through perhaps onto it, through a now lost full-scale cartoon. And so the gradual build-up, the orchestration in color, that serene presence that survives still almost miraculously fresh after approaching 5 centuries here in Vienna.
Raphael died in 1520, still a young man. The much older Leonardo da Vinci had died the year before. Only the third of that great trio of High Renaissance artists, Michelangelo, lived on for almost another half a century. But there were other younger painters who caught the spirit of the High Renaissance and added a vision of their own. And one of the most distinctive of these was an artist who spent his life in the fairly small city of Parma in the Lombard